Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited about today. Before I introduce our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than when they got up, and boy, does that help, particularly when you have a long run ahead of you. Charlie Munger, our guest today, has the luxury of being very smart and a learning machine. Good friend of the Culture Matters podcast, Nathan Merrill, who served not only at the pulpit, he served at the what do they call it in the in the bathroom on the tile there. I was trying to figure
Yeah.
out a more eloquent way of saying that. He served in the home as an artisan in the contracting space, a true master of one's tile needs, the tile obsession, as he calls it, a content creator on Instagram, friend of the Culture Matters podcast, a philosopher of the sort. Thanks for coming back to the show. And of course, I picked this quote today because, as of recent, our spiritual comrade has fallen. Charles Charles T. Munger. Thanks for coming back.
I am surprised and shocked that we're here for a third episode, not because I doubt anything to do with your intellect or judgment or ability to pick guests, but because of my own, I know how manic my own mind is. And when you say learning machine, um, it's manic. I'm a learning machine because my mind is always going into a million directions and I just want to know about them, for
Hmm.
better or worse. So, I'll take the praise, uh, however accurate or inaccurate it may be, though. But it's good to be back, though.
I'd like to ask you about this threads phenomenon because I follow you on threads. I was told to start posting on threads by my better half. And I just said, okay, no problem. And so I started doing it. At first, I started posting like thoughts that had been saved in my notepad that had never seen the light of day. And then that became, well, first of all, I didn't post them because in the true form, I ended up editing them and then creating a whole bunch of work for myself because in the process of trying to take them from one folder to start putting them on threads. What was your journey to start going on thread? Is the question there? Start putting your thoughts on threads because I see you posting, you know, ravenously sharing your thoughts, and I'm reading them there. So I'd like to put some attention to it for the audience. But what was that journey like? Why are you on
Um,
there?
it's an avenue of expression that felt fresh, felt new, and really it comes down to expression for me. I'm not, while I am a learning machine, I am not the most intelligent about understanding leverage in terms of where to put my voice, where to put my thoughts, and all that sort of thing. And so my strategy has always been random in that regard. Wherever it feels fitting and wherever it feels like there's opportunity to plug something in, I'll do that. Twitter, I tried on Twitter for a little while, but it never really took off. And that would be, I would say that the feeling, the experience of that is on my end. I just wasn't able to get comfortable enough in the space. Twitter's a space of intellectual powerhouses, and most of the conversation is well established. And for whatever reason, the feeling of breaking into that dialogue with people, which is my ultimate goal, is to enter into conversations like this with people. Um, I don't. This is going to sound proud, but with the intellectual capacity to engage in these type of conversations, they're all on Twitter. I just it didn't quite click with me. I couldn't quite get the thoughts out in the way that I wanted to, and it didn't leave me with the feelings I was looking for, which sounds very shallow, but it is very much part of my everyday experience. Is that I think perhaps because my thoughts are so uh, diverse and they go in so many different directions all the time, I have learned to listen to my intuition, my feelings about a situation, in spite of what all the different logical threads, no pun intended, or
Mhm.
intellectual threads are going on in my mind. I've had to figure out how to follow something else entirely. And I don't know what that is exactly, but threads just kind of popped up, and I thought this could be fun. This could be an avenue of expression. It's new, and so I think there'll be a different type of virgin engagement, if you will. I think there'll be a different type of social media thing emerge because it's a new thing. It's a experiment. I don't know where Threads is going exactly, but I don't know if that really answers the question well, other than curiosity, and it seemed like a place to put random thoughts, other than in journals, which is most of where I put the random stuff. I just write it down.
Where how many times are you posting? Or are you thinking in those terms, or just posting as you think freely?
When I'm posting more actively, it's basically because there's intellectual fluidity there. There's stuff flowing, there's stuff happening. I'm in a state of being able to write and being able to think like that freely. The rigidity of it, I would say this is a psychological flaw of my own. When things become rigid to me, my creative tap just sort of dries up very quickly.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Um, yeah, and so for better or worse, I have to keep things as fluid as I can and as it's one of those counterintuitive things. I like to operate within a framework of structure to keep that discipline element there. Um, but I try and just get on there every day. Try and put something on there every day. And if I don't have the intellectual tap spigot turned up, then I'll just put some kind of selfie or song or image, something creative on there. Fred seems to be very creatively um, swirling at the moment. So I don't know if I can tap into
Mm.
that aspect of it or not.
You know, something that started to manifest itself from podcasts was I was writing down my thoughts like I did just now. Like rigidity undermines creativity. That's something I would want to
Hmm.
post.
Hmm.
So in these
And
conversations I'm having with people on the media, right, through this medium of the podcast, I have all these thoughts of their thoughts that I'll write down.
yeah,
And then so I finished a podcast the other day, and then I immediately just posted all the thoughts from my notes from the podcast,
yeah,
and
yeah,
posted like 10 times, not giving a
right,
shit about
right, right.
like am I posting too much? I don't know. I'm curious what you think about that.
I try not to play those type of games in my own mind too much because I will play that game way far beyond any logical reason to be playing that game. You know what I mean? I think you understand the nature of the mind games that happens internally. The dialogues that I will have with myself concerning those particulars are not pleasant dialogues. And unless I can engage with those dialogues in an intellectually like honest way, which is difficult for me to do because it's all internal. So you're always really at the mercy of your own deceptions, and
Mm.
it's really hard to gauge those deceptions. And so I don't like to think about it in those terms. If I'm feeling exhausted about the volume of my post, then I'll slow down. If I'm personally not feeling exhausted, I won't. And I will try and use that as a barometer, maybe a proxy of how other people might be feeling too. And so it also has the benefit as well as um I don't know. We're all seeking connection with other people. And when you spend too much time in dialogue in your brain about those type of thoughts, I think it disconnects you from how other people actually are feeling, which is probably more in line with how you're feeling than what you would like to um, give credit. And so if I exhaust myself, I'll slow
Mm.
down. If I'm personally not exhausted, I'll keep the pedal to the metal and like you said, just not really give a shit about it and post 20 things in a row if that's what I want to do. And furthermore, I always try and keep the thought in my head too that this is a weird dimension that we're playing in. It has this place within reality, but it's different than the quote unquote real world. It's all the real world, but it's this different space. And I don't want to equate that in terms of how I prioritize it in my life with my emotions concerning my family, my children, my day to day work, me installing tile, all of that. So I don't want to become that pressing on me. Those thoughts, I don't want them to be that heavy because at the end of the day, I'm engaging in these things for probably reasons not entirely different than, say, what you are, but there are different motivations behind why I'm doing what I'm doing as opposed to why you're doing what you're doing, I think.
It's interesting when you say pressing upon you, is that in the thread of it seems as though people that are become they're content creators, it's almost as if they're yeah, there's a creation, they're consuming themselves in a sense, or the machine is consuming the machine, the medium is consuming the content creator. In a sense where our whole life can become like almost like a black hole. Everything else is pushed away, is
Mm-hmm.
second to the labor that we're performing on behalf of these social platforms. It happens below our awareness. Like it just occurs. It's occurring at varying degrees of occurrence,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of intention. You have some level of an apprehension or something. I'm picking up to make sure that it doesn't
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
consume you.
Well, the apprehension is because of the personal factors in my own life. It just has to do with my own personal priorities. If I had the time to, if I could place a label upon intellectual musings and just posting on social media platforms that was proper in the sense of like on par with commercially what doing tile work does. Like I have to pay my bills, I have to provide for my family, those sort of things. And so just pragmatically, I have to put a certain amount of energy into the things I have to do every day. And I don't have commercial connection with what I do in the social media world, really. I do work with brands and manufacturers and all that, and it has commercial connection. But to me, even in spite of all that, I want to keep my psychological attachment to all of this light. I want to keep it so that it could be snipped at any point and it could go away and not then
Mm.
transfer over and affect my family, my personal life, the things that are nearest and dearest to me. And
Yeah,
it's just the conflation
yeah,
of worlds, it's the conflation of worlds. And I understand these worlds are intertwined in a way that is as long as electricity is on the planet, these worlds will never be unentangled now in the way that they are. But I still have a huge part of my life that is quote unquote in the old world.
yeah.
And so it's just navigating this weird space that we're in, and also your energy, your the psychological structure of your mind. What are the things that you will allow to rigidify that structure or just be accoutrements or decoration, the Christmas tree in the living room, so to say. And that's different for everyone. I don't place any sort of value judgment on anyone regarding that. or myself even, because obviously there are paths through there's a million paths a person could take through these spaces.
I'm curious. I want your thoughts on this. I because I was trying to articulate this. Um, when I was talking about or sharing a thought about the future couples will have to work together in response to the overburdening psychological
Yeah,
um environment, like the individuals, right? We have in the old world. I wrote this like just simple picture, right? Old world, new world. So you're saying big part of your life's in the old world. There's part of who you are to yourself and your old world, and as well as like the general culture represented in the
hmm
new world. Um, in the old world, when there wasn't this new world, there wasn't these social platforms. We had this. We only had this antagonism of ourself in respect to, let's just say, labor.
hmm
It's like the anti-capitalistic argument. One of them is the alienation that occurs from labor.
hmm
Right, we're contending with like the identity we construct in our work, the influence that has on us, and our family, and us outside of our labor. But
hmm
what's interesting to me about the social media is it's another battle of ourself to itself.
Right.
It's like I don't only have to contend with who I am to my family, as in where I came from, my progenitors, mom and dad, or what have you, siblings, what have you, cousins, all that. Then there's the family that I create, right? My progeny, my life partners, whatever. And in relation to work, whether I'm working for a company or I'm owning a company, there's this tension, right? In being an economic species or what have you. Now there's
hmm
this social tension. It's like almost
Right.
another layer on top of that separation of the self to itself that occurs in relationship of the self with
Right.
with the world, right? Through business. So now there's this other layer, this new world you're talking about, that's
Yeah.
creating another level of tension, degrees of tension. This is an unclear, I'm not done with this. I'm trying to figure this out. What are the consequences? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for our audience? But the sheer fact that you thought about, oh, and then you said on this podcast, like a lot of my life is in the old world, you said, not the
hmm
new world. And you're thinking about the fact that there are these two worlds. If we
Right.
take social media out of it, in the old world, it'd be you battling with this your own sovereignty with your labor and your family, right? How your
Right.
business or how your employment is going to encroach on your identity as it relates to your family, and as a person that's not laboring, right? A part of the economic machine. And now we're adding this another level of the social, I don't know even know the social economy. These social
Yeah.
platforms is right now we're in the social economy. We're not
hmm
monetizing this in any direct way, this
hmm
podcast. Like, what the hell are we really doing?
Right. Right.
Indirectly monetizing it in some fashion. So I don't know. I'm curious
Right.
what your thoughts are on that. It's like a conversation we'll probably, slowly unpack as we explore these thread talk here. But I think you're
Well, I
ending
think,
with that. Anyway, yep.
well, the word that you use that really, I think, would be good to think about is this word alienation. Because you mentioned these layers of relation to the self and the complexities of the relation to the self. social media is strange because it is a mirror psychologically unlike any mirror that the species has seen so far. And so this goes into some things that I've thought a lot about recently, and I don't think that any philosopher or intellectual person in the world could really answer this question, but it's the nature of emergence, true emergence, whether true emergence exists or whether it's all mechanical in the sense of uh, is this the progression of a technological species that is in line with the species following a narrative with almost what's the word I wanted? Is this the technological progression of a species that's following an evolutionary narrative that has uh, our best interest in mind? You know, this goes into this idea of artificial general intelligence. Most of the conversation is centered around the longevity of the human species. And I think that now we're entering into this thing where it's like, wait a minute, I don't think we realize something is emerging that we lack capacity to understand and conceptualize the ways in which it is transcending us in our psyche, our psychology. It does not feel to me is prepped for looking into this mirror. You know what I'm saying? Where it's
Yes.
almost like Medusa, where people are looking into the eyes of humanity in a way that, and not just humanity, I think we're looking into the eyes of humanity through the mirror that social media is, but beyond that,
Oh,
now it's like, wow, you can look into this thing and talk about.
all right, wait. This is where I want to throw this into the bag here. The consumer consumes products.
Mhm,
The content creator consumes themselves.
mhm. Yeah,
Like
but
that's essential. Like I don't know. I just
yeah,
that comes to mind. The consumer
it
consumes
does. Yeah,
products. Well, we're all consumers, right? And we're all
right.
content creators, whether we realize it or not. What have you? Like, let's say that
Hmm.
that's a proposition. As consumers, we're consuming products and services.
Yeah.
Selfish desire, like selfish, we want to survive. We need to eat. We need to shelter, and beyond that, procreate. Blah blah blah, and
Hmm.
feel good about it throughout the case, right? So we're consumers. It's, we consume products and services. Content creators consume themselves.
Right. Yeah, I think you've actually alluded to this before. This act of creation is the consumption of your own creative energy. The expression of your own creative energy is really synonymous with what you're saying, the consumption of it. And it can be a vicious cycle. It can be something that I don't know how a creative person is supposed to navigate that space because the inner world and the outer world are both sources of creative inspiration. And I don't think that they're really different. I think they're both the all the universe. It's all one thing um, at a certain level. But you can go into that thing, and you're going into the depths of something. And creativity is something that I don't think a lot of people realize that when you go into it, you're not just going into this fun, happy place where it's like, oh, ideas emerge. You can paint something, you can write something. No, you're going into the depths of I don't know what. I mean, you're going in, and social media is this platform that's arisen in combination with the just the sheer computing power of the technology that is it's opened up this world of consumption where I just don't know where it goes. It's hard to say where it's going. I don't want to just be cynical and look at data and say, well, look what it's doing to angst and depression and this. I don't want to just look at those technicalities and say it's all bad because look at this outcome. And a lot of people take that avenue. Um,
Ooh,
something is
oh,
happening.
well, that's an interesting thought because those things exist no matter what. But with it, in the
Right.
absence of the mental, and I mean this without making a joke of it, it's almost like
Hmm.
this new world creates a mental masturbation as opposed to the old world creates
Right.
a literal one where
It's
we
a
have to
buffet
go out
though.
and fight,
Right.
right, and use our
Right.
anxiety. Meaning, like, what were you saying?
Well, the new world is a buffet of it though. It's un you know what I'm saying? The whole thing is unencumbered. It's everything that you want is there right now and people drown in it. So
Without the
that's the
action
thing.
to synthesize it.
Right. There is no internal alchemy taking place. There is no synthesizing happening. There is no real structured uh whether it's all of this stuff is arbitrary. It's internally derived. The structure that we're going to derive from a source, from a well of whatever it is that is emerging is there. It's beyond our capacity to take all of it in. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. And so the question is what type of arbitrary structure are you going to
Hmm.
encase your life in so that the fire hydrant doesn't just blow your head off, right? So it's like no one's going to deny that that all of the flavors, all of the essence of what humanity is and its life force, its value, its creative passion, we can't deny that all of that's not there. It's all there in the social scape, this landscape that's emerging, but it's emerging in this exponentially quick way that is, I think, intoxicating us all to this world, this inner world that we were previously um, I don't want to say unaware of. We just didn't interact with it in the same way. I think it's like this. I think this is an easy way to put it. Technology makes our world easier to exist in the most pragmatic of ways, in terms of eating and having your basic necessities provided for. It removes the physical hard edge of reality. And so there's a physical angst that's always there. Like if we were alive 10,000 years ago, we'd be wearing animal skins
Yeah.
and, around a campfire in a cave or whatever. That's some serious physical opposition to survival. And I think that we're naive in thinking that as technology emerges, that whatever it is behind that, that we label that as just physical opposition, but the structure, like the thing that is behind that, the struggle to survive. I think that we're naive in thinking that as technology progresses and life gets easier, that struggle to survive, or the word that you used earlier, alienation, that that goes away. I actually think that as we know more technically, and as these systems become technically more advanced, that the nature of humanity's struggle only changes, it morphs into something else. And so now we're looking into this mirror that is of
It would change
our
all
own self.
preconditions. It
It
has the
changes all
Yeah.
preconditions.
It has the possibility to change all preconditions. You know, I
I don't
wonder.
think it alleviates us, though. I don't think it alleviates us of the burden of existence. And this is where it gets really philosophical. I think that there is a structural burden to reality. It is the demand of the universe that structure will be, otherwise, there will be nothing. And where is humanity as a species trending on the physical front? Well, life, it's like that movie, Wally. You remember Wally, like the little robot? It's an animated movie for children. They send this little robot off into space because the planet is overrun and polluted and nuclear and whatever. And not this little robot. The humans leave like Elon Musk style. They leave the planet and they dwell in these pods. And over time, they just turn into these amorphous blobs of humans. Um, but the struggle is still there. The innate struggle of existence, I think it's implicit to existence because there is structure, is still there. So all that I'm saying is that the angst will not go away. In fact, I think that as our technological advancement continues, physical angst turns into a different type of angst. And I
Would you say
think that,
deconstructive angst? Like if we then made it a binary, like deconstructive angst is when we feed it ourselves. Constructive angst is when we
I don't,
cooperate or we construct. We feed on something else. You know,
right.
let's use it. If we're working we're a business,
Hmm.
we're competing again in the marketplace. We have to cooperate with one another to compete effectively.
Hmm.
Now there will be winners and there'll be losers. We all win at in the long term though if we play the game. Like if we have I have a tile business, you have a tile business. I got to cooperate with my employees to compete with you, or else we're going to be failing internally. I can't really compete with you. And we have to cooperate to compete, and vice versa. You have to cooperate to compete, and it's through that competition, outside of the individual company, like the collective unity of the two competing companies, that overall all consumers benefit. So, like, I would argue if both parties have angst, party A that's cooperating internally can compete externally. That's constructive anxiety. It's being utilized in
Hmm.
constructive ways. The other team, deconstructive anxiety is manifested. The other team's competing with itself and cannot compete against the other company. I'm sorry, I should have said company. You know, so it's a deconstructive angst. It's not being generated towards aims, goals, desires, the testing of values of each individual to work together, cooperate. So it starts to eat on itself, and that team will break down, and that company will not be able to compete as effectively. And so ultimately, the less competitive each company is, everybody loses in the long run because, well, what's the point of competing in the business then? It's to increase the output of goods and services and make everybody win because we're all consumers, right? We're benefiting from goods and services. So, where the reason I'm trying to use that analogy is to make a point that the anxiety never goes away. Like to say what you're saying, like it. How is it being utilized
Hmm.
in action, in interaction?
Well, I'm referring more to the phenomenological experience of it, because the collective angst of a culture is not personal angst. I think that the comparison does apply because a person can be constructive toward a goal individually, or deconstructive concerning a goal or the lack thereof. But the angst itself, though, as it is experienced for the personal individual, it is the thing I think that we are as beings. That's what Heidegger referred to as the thrownness of life. I mean, it is the thing that we are subjected to, whether we want to be or not. And so, culturally, if you have a group of people trying to practice what we'll call collective angst that's constructive, it the presupposition there is that we have goals that we orient around, that we agree upon, whatever those goals may be. So, but for the individual, though, the orientation or the cycling around a goal, um, is this is a very Nietzschean idea. It's like this is the construction of your own internal. It's either it's using the angst to internally construct those goals in a way that's fitting for you, that can carry you through the structure that is existence, or those internal gods collapse entirely. I mean, the gods collapse for anyone internally at some point, no matter what, I feel like. Now, how a person deals with that internal um, event is different for everyone. I think some people can deal with that eternal internal event by going externally, they can put all of their focus into something derivative like a culture or a business or a goal, that sort of thing. But it's still not really alleviating them of the fundamental nature of what their experience feels like internally.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Yeah, so anyways, I said that because it's pointing also to the individual within this other new world. All of that I'm just referring to, it's only being expedited in the new world. Children grow up faster psychologically. Physiologically, no, not so much, but psychologically, they grow
Yes.
up in a way that they did not grow up before. And so there's so many ramifications to all of this. And that's what I'm getting at. This thing that's emerging, um, it's difficult because you have conflicting uh, priorities. If you have economic priority, it's like a corporation is an entity that is not the awareness of an entity such as the corporation. Your identity can be wrapped up into something that transcends generational boundaries. And in fact, I would argue that the emergence of the intelligence of a corporation, it does not feel in the way that an individual feels. And that thing, even if there's constructive angst going on within that culture that is positive for the species or even the competitor long term, it is irrelevant to how the individual experiences that. The technological processes and the advancement of technology in society will grind an individual to pieces and never feel that experience. And so I'm not necessarily concerned with the abstracted idea of how do these things positively impact the cultures of companies or groups of people. And that's I'm concerned with how does the individual live in a world where these emergent technologies can easily grind them to nothing. It can destroy them in a way that is very Nietzschean, except a million times faster. I mean, Nietzsche would have committed suicide a long time ago in the New World, I feel like, um,
Wow.
because because of we, it's Medusa. I mean, we're looking into this abyss, and we don't really recognize what we're looking into, and we don't. Well, I mean, what is it? Who knows what it is? I don't know what it is, and like I said, I don't know if it is evolutionary forces that have our good in mind, or if not, if they don't have our good in mind, I'm okay with that long term. But me as an individual, what can I do to alleviate the angst of that grinding process that's taking place? That's what I'm concerned with.
I don't think the answer is to start an OnlyFans.
I don't think so either.
Because that
I,
would
you
be an
know, I
expression of what that's an
it
extreme.
is, it
I
is
get to make this conversation palatable for our friends listening. That's what we're talking about here as an extreme, meaning
right.
when I talk about an OnlyFans, I I I believe this is a version of that.
Yeah,
So
right.
our
I get the
nature,
metaphor. Yeah,
this is a version. What we're doing is a version of that. Um, it is, and the consequences of which we don't know what they are is the collective, right? I'm of the thought that I don't think what's quote unquote good for us is something we could conceptualize
right,
because that is it's not like it's an inherently contradicting viewpoint.
right,
It's
right,
what's absolutely horrifying to us is likely what's going to be necessary or to necessitate whatever the version of us will exist beyond
right.
our experience at like the end, in 100 years, whatever that means, right? Time, yeah. So I guess this will be a cliffhanger for. We'll explore the cultural consequences of the individual in terms of OnlyFans and content creation on the next
Yeah.
thread.
Yeah. That sounds great to me. I mean, we're yeah. I I'll leave it. I have a million thoughts about this topic. 40 minutes isn't enough for us to really go too much into
Let's
these, but
follow
we've
up.
touched on some things.
Shout out to Threads, your Threads. If you're anyone's listening, you can follow Nathan at Vision Stone and Tile on Threads.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm Jay Doran, the Culture Man, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.